Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. I am Sarah Da Silva, or welcome back if you've already been here before. Today, we're going to talk about narcissistic parents. What are they? How do they work? What are the roles that we play when we're a child of a narcissist? And how does this affect our life afterwards? We're going to get deep. So today, this is going to apply to anyone who thinks that they may be in a narcissistic family dynamic, playing out some of these child roles that I'm going to speak about in a moment. But what we're going to do today is uncover that so that you can see what kind of patterns might be playing out that you need to stay wary of and slowly move away from, because they're not actually helping you. So where might this play out? It might play out in your family, but it also may play out in a work dynamic or a place where there's an authoritative role and they have people who they're kind of looking over or looking after. So we're talking about bosses who are looking after their staff. They may play these roles out with their staff. We're talking students of particular teachers, perhaps. We're talking leaders of groups and their minions, per se. But today we're just going to talk about the family, and you'll be able to make some direct lines and comparisons between the family and these other groups and how this plays out in those roles as well, in those dynamics. So basically, when we are born, we're born with a blank slate. We're born with this beautiful potential to grow into something that's beautiful, whatever we want to be, in the future, whatever we want to be in our dreams. We have this potential to create that for ourselves. Yet when we're born into this blank canvas, when it comes to a narcissistic parent, it doesn't really play out that way, the way it should for us. So when we're talking about a normal, happy, healthy dynamic, we're talking about that blank canvas coming in, and the environment is one in which everything is very fostered towards the child's development, fostered towards the child's, to understanding the child, their needs, and then reaffirming and validating that that's what we're giving to the child. So giving the child choice, giving the child lessons and learnings, but also giving them compassion and understanding, being patient with them, things like that, picking up on their cues. So something that you might notice as you get older, but you didn't notice when you were younger, is that maybe if you have a narcissistic parent, they found it very hard to pick up on your cues when you were a young child. So you may have been reaching out and asking them, can you show me attention? And they were either really overbearing, where they weren't able to help you make your own decision, or they were neglectful, where you were crying out for more attention, or you had to try and figure out things for yourself a little bit, kind of like the Matilda syndrome that we see happening with a lot of neglected children. They have to really force themselves to become independent because their cues are not met or read by their parents. So they're like, how am I going to get my needs met? I'm going to have to figure out how to do that for myself. And those people kind of they put up a wall where they find it very hard later on in life to open up to others and allow help from others, because they have been protecting themselves for so long. But we'll get into that soon. But for a narcissistic parent, if you're born into a narcissistic parent's arms, they look at you when you're first born and they don't see you as this blank canvas full of potential. They see you as this blank canvas ready for molding and churning into the perfect little mini clone of themselves, full of potential to fulfill all of their fantasies, desires, and dreams that they couldn't fulfill in their own life, and therefore are going to project them onto you. if that's you as their child. So if you're the child of a narcissistic parent, you will find it very hard to not live up to a sense of perfection. You will find it very important to move towards perfection all the time, and you'll be trying to get better and better and closer to perfection in order to get the validation that you need from the parent that you never ever got. And that, my friends, I can say right now at the beginning of this whole thing, is never going to come from a narcissistic parent, because nothing is ever going to be good enough for a narcissistic parent. So basically, what you are in their eyes as a child is something that can bring them validation that they are a good parent. So in their eyes, if you do any wrong or don't obey what they wish you to live up to or do, even behavior wise, they will start to devalue you as a person and discredit you and start to put you into a role that makes you feel like you need to please them all the time and get that validation, which then plays out later on in life where you become this perfectionist, striving for a type of success that never will exist for yourself, because there is no end point. Basically, the parent will never be satisfied and you will never be satisfied, because there's no end point to this perfection that they're looking for, basically. So let's talk about the Macy's development period that I teach my clients about. It's important to learn this a few times, I think, because then once it kind of sets in, it helps you to understand and integrate this knowledge unconsciously when you start to learn more about how the roles play out in families. So when we are a child, we're kind of this sponge, and we're just taking in everything from our environment. That's why we find it hardest to relieve the kinds of trauma and childhood experiences that we found the most difficult, because they are so ingrained in who we are, and that sense of, shell or a casing that wasn't yet built. It gets built at about the age of 10, say, between boys and girls, like age of 10 to 12. It's called the critical factor in our mind. So our unconscious mind is no longer open. It actually closes up, kind of like a wall that protects us from the outside world. It helps us to become skeptical, to understand that, when we see Superman fly on TV, we can't just jump out a window and do that ourselves. That's what the critical factor is there for. But when we're young, the reason why we have such a vast imagination and we see things as like this, whoa, everything's so amazing, is because our critical factor isn't yet formed. So our unconscious mind is quite open and we're taking in so much information. We don't tend to realize that, because we're such a sponge, and our parents maybe didn't realize this at the time, that their negative habits were also starting to rub off on us as well at the time as well. So parents today are actually, we're holding parents today much more responsible for their behaviors, because that is starting to rub off on their children. And that is what creates a child later on in life. And it's really hard once these habits are ingrained to then change them, because they become unconscious. Once they're unconscious, they're kind of part of like the system that makes up who we are. So the things that make up who we are the things that we pick up early on in these stages of life: their values, their beliefs, their belief systems, their ways of thinking and being, their ways of walking and speaking. They're things that come from our society and our culture. There are, ways that, we can even perceive illness and wellness. Everything that makes up who we are is ingrained in our unconscious. So it's kind of like when we are thinking and being in the world, our body continues to just display these values and beliefs and everything that we are, without us even having to think about it. It's not like we walk down the street thinking, I need to put this front out to the world. We just kind of are it, and then we're thinking about everything else that we need to think about as we go on in the day. So it's very unconscious who we are. It's very ingrained inside ourselves. But with a child, it's there to be molded and shifted and changed. So with a child, it's easy for them to pick up on negative habits that we may not have learned to fix in ourselves. And then these children start to display the same kinds of habits as we grow up and go forward in life. So our values will change based on our situation. And that is our environment that we're in, the society and then the culture and everything that makes us who we are, even the family system that we're in, create who we are, and our values become that. So let's talk about the development period and how that our values are created and shifted in that time. So between the ages of 0 and 7, we're in the development period, or what Macy would call the imprint period. And that is when we're basically that sponge who's taking in everything around us. It's through the people around us, it's through the environment that we're in, it's in the country, the socioeconomic status that we're in, it's the siblings that we have, it's the friends that we have, it's, whether we go to school or not, whether we're homeschooled, it's the teachers that we have, it's the religion that we have, it's the places that we go, it's everything that makes us who we are. And basically, those things will stay with us until we die, basically. And it's interesting that if we were born to the same parent, but were to grow up in a completely different environment, this has been studied with twins, actually. So the nature versus nurture debate. If we grew up in a completely different environment, we would be a completely different, slightly different person. There are some things that carry on genetically, but the environment does dictate a lot about who we become as a person later on in life. And whether that's fostered or not is very, very important to place upon our parents. But if our parents didn't have the skills or the tools to give us what we needed, then it's our responsibility later on in life to try and change those things that we formed early on in life without having any control over. So after the age of 7, our critical factor kind of starts to form. We become a little bit more skeptical. We go, oh, I can't fly like Superman, but I can imagine. So we start to look at things that we like in the world and things that we don't like in the world. And this is called the modeling phase. So we start to model things that we like, and we start to push away from things that we don't really like. So, we might go from the age of 7, really worshipping our parents, up into the age of 14, where we start to worship a celebrity or a friend or a mentor or a teacher. Sorry, I think I'm getting delivery. A mentor or a teacher that we really look up to, and we really value everything that they do and say. So later on in life, we kind of become a little bit more like them. We try to model who they are, and that helps us to become who we are as a person. So this starts to create our whole identity in the modeling phase. From the age of 7 to 14, we're starting to decide, who am I in the world? What do I like? What don't I like? And what am I going to take forward as I become an adult? But in this phase, so as we're going from 7 to 14, when we're with a healthy parent, they will foster this. They will say, I really enjoy that you're creating an identity outside of us and the family, and we see that, and we're fostering it, and we're encouraging you to be the best version of yourself. But when you're with a narcissistic parent, they're seeing that you're slightly different, that you're trying to go against the grain, and it's not a complete perfect clone model of the parent who believes that they are perfect when they have these grandiose self-beliefs. So they start to devalue the child and make the child believe that this new identity that they're creating is bad. Let's hold that there, and let's go on to the next phase of development, which is the socialization period. So in the socialization period, we go from the age of 14 to 21. And this is the age where we're starting to go out into the world, and we're starting to figure out, what do we believe and what do we take on as a value in our life, and what don't we want in our life? And we're going to kind of project those beliefs onto the world. So we're going to project them into the greater environment. We might say to our parent, you know, everything that you believe is not what I believe. And I'm figuring out all this stuff, and I'm starting to learn all this stuff, and I know more than you. And this is actually a really normal phase in the development where the child starts to believe that they know more than their parent. This is completely normal because they get to a phase where they're starting to form their own self-identity outside of the family structure. This is impertinent to the child going out into the world and creating an identity that they feel is fully formed, where they feel comfortable being themselves, where they feel comfortable speaking their mind and speaking their beliefs, and feel comfortable creating relationships where there's trust and there's no sense of abandonment based on their self-esteem, or, you know, based on whether they're good or bad, or their virtue, or whatever they value, or what they do, or how they behave. A child needs to be able to believe that they can go out into the world and have that sense of identity strong, so that they can feel confident, so that they can achieve the things that they want to achieve. But when we have a narcissistic parent coming up to the phase where we're starting to build the self-identity, this gets completely stunted. It gets pulled back. The child will lose things like access to freedoms. For example, a personal one of my own was I wasn't allowed to learn to drive the car. That really stunted my driving. Now, it was my responsibility to learn later on, but it really stunted my learning experience because they didn't give me enough trust to be able to learn something, even if it was with another person, so I could gain some freedom in my life. They believed that I didn't need that sense of freedom because they were giving me that freedom. So it's a sense of control that the narcissistic parent wants to have. They want to have control over the child's life, because anything that's outside of the parent, anything identity-wise, anything value, belief-wise, virtue, behavior-wise, actions, or even hobbies and skills, anything like that, that's outside of what the parent's realm of skill or competence, or even what they want to do, the parent can get very challenged by this and feel like they're kind of threatened by their child's new sense of freedom and responsibility and independence in life. So they kind of try and pull it back. So they'll use the cycle of abuse to stunt their child's self-esteem and make them feel like they're not as independent in the world. So they therefore feel like they're dependent on the parent, the narcissistic parent. The parent will then reinforce that they are the one that can create this sense of freedom in the world for the child, and then the child feels like they can't create that sense of freedom for themselves. So we can see that now in the development stage, where the child is supposed to be fostered to go out and become a person who can live life efficiently in the world, is actually being pulled back and told that they cannot do it. Told that if they do it, there's a condition, there's going to be a punishment, or there's going to be a bad condition to them doing that. And therefore the child decides to not do it. And they decide to actually fawn or please the parent in order to feel validated or feel good enough in the eyes of the parent, and therefore not themselves. Because they feel like, in the eyes of the child, they feel like they can't make their own decisions because the parent has established that they are the one who can make the decisions for them, that they know best, that parents know best, and that you should basically have your parents be the be all and end all of your life, that they know best, that they know how to make all the decisions for you, that you cannot make a decision on your own, and if you tried, you would fail. That's what a narcissistic parent makes you believe in this dynamic. Now, this is due to the parents' own circumstances. Like they believe that if you go out into the world, that they're going to lose a part of themselves because you are an extension of themselves. So if you go out into the world and you're something different, then that means that they aren't living up to what they thought they would be as a parent. So it's kind of like this little mini story that's playing out that they cannot let go of. And if you start to veer from this mini story, this mini narrative that they're playing out, then they will put you into a role. Now, let's talk about the roles, because generally the projections of the parents' dreams, desires, and fantasies in life, and whatever they wanted for their children will get projected into these roles. And the roles, let's make it very, very clear, the roles are not static. They are dynamic. They can move. They're interchangeable. Children will be moved from one role to another based on how they're behaving or what they're giving the parent. So the 4 main roles that I'm going to talk about today are the golden child, the scapegoat, the black sheep, and the lost child. The scapegoat and the black sheep are basically kind of very, very similar, but the black sheep is the one who's kind of has realized what's going on in the family and has said, I'm not taking any of this. I'm leaving this dynamic and I'm going to expose the family. So they're the ones that are the biggest threat to the narcissist, who has this big facade that they want to keep externally shown to the world, which is not true, obviously. Behind closed doors, it's very abusive. But the black sheep knows what's going on, and they leave this dynamic, and then the narcissist will discard them and discredit them as being something that is wrong. So they'll say that they're an abuser, they'll say that they're a drug addict, they'll say that they're a liar, they'll say that they're a bad person, they'll say anything to make anyone around the family or the person, the narcissist, believe that this black sheep is a bad person and we shouldn't believe anything that they say because they're lying, basically. But in reality, the black sheep is the one who can see the truth of what's going on and will call them out for it and has strong boundaries and doesn't want to take it anymore. The scapegoat, unfortunately, is the one who will call it out in the family, but then gets scapegoated and gaslit and put down and minimized and counted and all these things that come into gaslighting and manipulation and abuse. But are stuck in the family dynamic and are the ones who get put down and abused constantly, and their self-esteem starts to get shattered over time. And eventually, sometimes they turn into the black sheep who leaves, but sometimes they stay in this scapegoat role and they keep people-pleasing the narcissistic parent in order to try and eventually get validated and acknowledged and understood and seen and heard, but it never happens. And these people eventually get sick a lot of the time. They are generally very, very dependent on the narcissist. But also in the 2 other roles, we have the lost child. So it's basically the one who kind of just doesn't want to play into the ruffling any feathers, but they also don't want to play into the roles that are being played out. So they just kind of sit back and they kind of say nothing. They're kind of sometimes the enablers who kind of make it seem like it's less bad than it is, and they kind of trying to justify it because they're kind of self-gaslighting as well. They're kind of, in that self-sabotage role, going like, I kind of want to please my parent, but I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to hurt my siblings. I don't want to hurt anyone else that's involved. So I'm just going to kind of sit back and I'm just going to pretend like this is not going on. They're kind of in denial a little bit. And then we have the golden child. So the golden child is the one who can do no wrong in the narcissist's eyes, the one who is achieving the most, the one who is playing up to the vision that the narcissistic parent wants you to play. They're the ones who are doing the best in that sense. And these are the ones who are basically, they're the ones who unfortunately are playing the hardest role. Like they are getting up every morning and they're trying to be the best that they can be in their parents' eyes, but they're not actually being their true selves. And it's really, really sad because a lot of the time these kids will try and do everything to live up to their parents' expectations. And generally, in the end, it's still not good enough for these parents. It's really still not good enough for these parents. So if you're the golden child or the scapegoat or the black sheep or the lost child, you might have noticed when I explained some of these roles and how they play out for you, you might have played some of these roles yourself, and I did. I played all of them. I've played every single role, and they are still interchangeable in my family. I can see it still being played out, being separated and going no contact. But it's basically based on how the narcissist wants their life to be, everyone orbiting their life, everything that revolves around them. And if you're not living up to what they want, or if you are, you're in that role. You're either the golden child, you're the lost child, or you're the one who gets put down all the time, or whatever it is. And if you want to get out of that role, it's important to start paying attention to what kind of part of the cycle that you're playing out constantly with this person. Like, are you constantly people pleasing and fawning over them? And are you being praised, but then feeling like it's not quite good enough what you're doing because there's still more to be done? Are you being told that you cannot leave your parents' side? Are you told that you need to be calling your parent every single day? Are you, if you start to put up boundaries, are you told that that's wrong? If you tell your parent that you have plans for your life, or if you want to make some sort of different change in your life and your parent doesn't like it, if you have a partner that your parent doesn't like, or a friend that your parent doesn't like, how is all of this playing out in your life and with your relationship with your parent? Is it causing problems for your life? Because there is a sign here that you're playing out one of these roles that your parent is now playing up in order to achieve what they want, which is ultimate devotion and basically just service to their grandiosity. And you're never ever going to be able to give them what they want. It's never ever going to be good enough. Nothing is ever going to be good enough for them. Even on their deathbed, they're going to still, and I've read stories like this, even on their deathbed, they're still going to treat you like crap. So later on in life, being these roles, it manifests in different ways. If you are constantly the scapegoat, you will probably be a people pleaser in life. If you were constantly the golden child, you'll be a high achiever trying to achieve perfection, and you're probably already achieving it, but you think that it's not good enough. If you're the lost child, you probably feel quite anxious, and you probably don't speak your mind a lot. You probably sit back and want to say a lot of things, but you don't say it. If you're the black sheep, you probably feel like people don't like what you say because you speak the truth. But you also feel sad that because you've spoken the truth, you got shunned by the family because of it. So a lot of these manifest in different ways. Like, we have to deal with the emotions and the after effects that come up after that. Like, we have to really deal with the trauma that comes from not feeling ever good enough for our parent, no matter what kind of role we play in that dynamic. Even if we are the golden child, we're never going to be good enough for the parent. So the system is always going to stay the same with these kinds of parents. Nothing is ever going to change. The roles can change, definitely. The enablers of these people can also become narcissists themselves. You could have a narcissistic parent who creates a golden child out of one of your siblings, and then they become narcissistic because they never ever want to acknowledge or validate what's really going on. And then they become basically the ultimate flying monkey for the narcissist. And maybe one day they'll realize, maybe they'll never realize, but we have to realize that it's never going to come from the parent, ever. And if you do start to leave this toxic cultish dynamic, which I do call it the familial cult, this narcissistic familial cult, you'll kind of feel at a loss, and it's really scary. You're like, I'm not going to play any of those roles anymore. I'm going to leave. For me, it was going no contact. And for the first time in your life, you're met with the option of choosing what you want in life. You're met with the option of, you're met with the question, what do you want? And that's a really hard question to answer when your whole identity has been shrouded in your narcissistic parent, and you've been told what you want your whole life. And when you started to speak your mind about what you did want, your parent tried to change or shift that, or put ideas into your head about how that wasn't correct or right for you. So it's going to be scary, and it's going to be a bit of a journey trying to figure out where you're going from here, because you're kind of like, where do I begin? So the best advice right here is to begin at starting to just make small decisions for yourself, like choosing what you really want, even if it makes other people unhappy. And the more and more you practice this, even when it makes you uncomfortable, the more it'll get easier for you. So putting up boundaries, saying no, speaking your mind, the more and more you do these things over time, as you get out of that dynamic, you're going to realize that, wow, this is really easy, and it's actually helping me to create who I really am, because it's based upon what I choose to be and what I think and what I value and what I believe. So if you weren't given the tools to do any of this stuff as you were growing up, it's going to be like coming out into the world and being reborn for the first time and going, what on earth am I supposed to do? So getting help from a therapist or a coach like myself, doing a course, or starting to read up on the tools that you can use for self-care and self-improvement and personal development, and self-understanding, all of these things are going to start to build your sense of self-identity. I also highly recommend creating a goal plan or a vision board about what you want to create in the next 1, 3, 5, 7 to 10 years, thinking about what you want short term and long term, and starting to create actions out of those goals. Because when you start to see yourself achieving those goals, you start to see that these are goals that your parent didn't set out for you. You set them out for yourself and you achieved them, and you're now starting to feel like you're competent and confident, and your self-esteem is starting to grow, and you're loving yourself because you're doing these things that you want to do. People really underestimate what it does to a person when they're stuck in the dynamic of being told by a narcissistic parent who you are and what you need to do and who you should be, and the way you are is wrong. And now, coming back to the beginning of my video, you'll see how this actually can play out in a dynamic with a boss or a group of friends, where your sense of identity is pulled back because this other person's sense of identity is put on a pedestal. And who's to say this person's identity is better than yours? It's because they believe in a self-grandiose way that their identity is better. So why do we believe, and why do we put, their identity and believe that their identity is better than ours? Because they have used manipulation techniques and tactics to make you feel and believe that way over time. So what you need to do is start building up your sense of self-worth and self-identity outside of that person. And it's really necessary to go no contact, or at least low contact in this time, because the more distance you create from this person, the more you'll start to see who your identity is outside of them. And you'll probably start to realize that you don't want to go back into that dynamic anymore. You'll probably realize that you're much happier outside of it. And you'll start to create better relationships outside of this dynamic, ones where these people actually appreciate and acknowledge and validate who you are as a person. They see who you are, and they love you for your good qualities, rather than qualities like allowing them to walk all over you, or allowing them to abuse you to get what they want. So I think the message here is that you were not born to be your parents' puppet. You were not born to live to make your parents happy. You were not born to do everything that your parent wants you to do. You were not born to be the identity that your parent wanted you to be. And you're not born to do anything that anyone tries to tell you to do that changes who you are, because who you are is who you are. And we're all who we are. Like, if we are a carbon copy of someone else, then we're not truly who we are, because no one is the same. We are made of our experiences, and these people that we grow up with as parents can be teachers to teach us who we want to be, for sure. But when you're stuck in the dynamic of narcissistic parent-child dynamic, or whatever other dynamic it is, where this person is taking away your identity and telling you who you are, and they're controlling your life, it's really, really important not to put them on a pedestal and say that they're the teacher. You're the teacher. You're the person who's going to get yourself out of this. There's people who can give you tools. There's people who can guide you. There's people who can support you. But in the end, you are the person who's going to get you to the place you need to be in the end, because you are the only person who knows what you want. I hope that this helps you. And I really, really, I empathize with those people who unfortunately had to wait until their parent passed away to feel like they had a sense of identity, because I just started listening to Jeanette, I think it's Jeanette McCurdy, is it? Yeah, Jeanette McCurdy. I just started listening to Jeanette McCurdy's book, and the last line of the prologue, I think it was who am I going to be outside of my mom? It's really important to start to distance yourself from the identity that the parent's trying to create from you before all of this happens, because if you have to do it when the parent passes away, it's even more traumatic, because you're trying to grieve a version of the parent that never really existed. Grieve the version of the parent that never existed right now and start to create the life you wanted outside of them. So when they eventually do pass away and you lose them for real, you're going to be grieving what really was. All right, so I hope you got a lot from this video today. I am here for you, and am here to support you. Please reach out to me. And for those who don't understand this dynamic or how it affects you, how it creates trauma or complex PTSD, if you're a survivor or someone who's experiencing this right now, please post in the comments below what your experience is like, and try to explain to someone who doesn't understand what it's like, because there are a lot of people who don't understand what it's like. And if you start to read through the comments and see things that are aligning with other people's experiences, you'll see that this experience is very, very common, and it aligns very, very clearly with other people's experiences. They're very, very similar, and it helps you to see that you're not alone, that this is much more common and, normal. We don't want to say it's normal, but it's normal to experience things like this in life, and to then therefore try to find healing outside of it. And there is healing. There's many ways to heal and find ways to build a sense of self-identity outside of this, as I have done it. So you're not alone. Reach out to me if you need support, and please like and subscribe if you like this. Have a good day.